So we had these huge, great backpacks, right? And we had to go down deep into the desert. This is on the border area between Egypt and Libya. And we had to get out of this oasis without getting seen by the military and disappear into the desert. And we got started, we got underway, and very, very quickly the 2 litres of water a day started to bite. And you know what it's like when you're in absolute torturous conditions and you haven't got enough water and you're carrying 35 kilo backpacks, and I was only like 59 kilos or so at the time.
Welcome to the Spartan Up podcast with Joe Sena, founder and CEO of Spartan Race.
We are talking about overcoming obstacles. The same way we teach people to get over obstacles on the course, we will teach you here on the Spartan Up podcast to get over obstacles in your mind.
Lisa Tamati has lived more stories than most of us dream of. For the last 25 years, she's competed in the world's toughest endurance challenges, from the Gobi Desert to the Himalayas. Today, she shares a few incredible tales from her best-selling books, Running Hot, Running to Extremes, and Relentless.
This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by DUROLANE, a single injection that may provide up to 6 months relief from osteoarthritis knee pain. Risks can include general knee pain and pain at the injection site. You can see full prescribing information at DUROLANE.com.
Guys, Joe Sena here, CEO, founder of Spartan, and we are on the Spartan Up podcast with Lisa. What time is it there?
It is 8:20 in the morning, so pretty early in the morning.
Pretty early in the morning. What time do you normally wake up?
Usually 6 to 7, depending on what I've got on.
And then what, 20-mile run?
Not at the moment, Joe. I did 25 years of it. So sometimes you've just got to reprioritize things in life, you know. And when you've done it for a long time, it sort of shakes your identity up a little bit. But then you think, hang on, that's cool. That's what it is right now. You've got to go with it. So, yeah.
I get it completely. So it's like the guy that's just walking out of my house here was 2008 Olympian in wrestling. Now he plays ping pong.
Wow, one stream to the other.
That's right. So the first book you wrote was Running Hot?
Yep. Basically, that's all my sort of early years. So just to give you a bit of background, I sort of got into ultramarathon running in my late 20s after I'd done actually a crossing of the Libyan desert as a part of a 4-person expedition. At that stage of my life, I'd been like sort of traveling around the world with the boyfriend at the time and, you know, doing adventure stuff, climbing mountains, trekking, and we happened to get invited to be a part of this 4-person expedition. Now, it was a legal crossing of the Libyan desert, so a 250-kilometre area of it. We weren't allowed to be there, and it sounded all very exciting. And in my youthful ignorance, who had no idea what the hell I was in for, we joined these other 2 guys and decided to have a go at this. And it was no support, so unsupported expeditions. We had to carry everything on our backs. So we had 20 litres of water each, and we had 10 days to get through this time. We were hoping to get through a bit quicker, but if you add up the mass, that's 2 litres of water a day in a desert that's 40 plus degrees during the day. The mass doesn't really add up very well. 2 litres a day is not to be recommended. And add to that, I was in a relationship with someone who was very abusive. I'll just say what it was. And he was constantly telling me how useless I was. And this was the first time that we'd ever been actually with a couple of other people. And so we had these huge, great backpacks, right? And we had to go down deep into the desert. This is on the border area between Egypt and Libya, and we had to get out of this oasis without getting seen by the military and disappear into the desert. And we got started, we got underway, and very, very quickly the 2 litres of water a day started to bite. And you know what it's like when you're in absolute torturous conditions and you haven't got enough water and you're carrying 35 kilo backpacks, and I was only like 59 kilos or so at the time. So for me, that was massive. And the boyfriend, we were doing he was a photographer, and we were wanting to do a book on the expedition. And so he wanted me to help him with the photography. And the leader of the expedition said, well, that's fine, but you can take as many photos as you like, but you've got to keep up. We've got to do 45 kilometers a day with these backpacks on, so you just have to keep up. And the boyfriend wanted me to help out with the photos. And I literally was physically just not able to do it, to be honest. If I sat down, I needed help getting up, that type of thing. And so it ended up with a big alpha male fight between these two guys, as you can imagine, him going, you can't treat her like that, and him going, I'll treat her however I like, type of thing. And I was like, whoa, okay, this is not okay. I've been treated like this for the last 5 years, and I'd sort of been used to being in an abusive relationship and isolated. And anyway, on day 4, this sort of comes to a head, and we're in desperate straits now with the dehydration. And the boyfriend, just says, well, that's it, the relationship's over, I'm leaving you. And he left us in the middle of the desert. And he left me with the other 2 guys, but he left. And when you're in that sort of situation, for a second I started to crumble and fall to pieces and start crying and, break down. And then I thought, hang on a minute, I'm in the middle of the Libyan desert. I've got to pull my shit together. And I can't be worried about him and if he's going to survive. Because one twisted ankle out there, you're gone, right? He's alone, but he was a much stronger, capable person. And I had to focus on what I had to do. And I owed it to the other guys not to cause any more troubles and to get on with it. And I'll deal with the aftermath afterwards. So I pulled my shit together and we carried on with the other 2 guys. And we went through hell. In the next few days, we had sandstorms, we had dehydration to the point of being, collapsing over and over again, and hallucinations and all of that sort of good stuff. And I did some massive damage to my body, and it got to the point a couple of times where it was, getting close to the point of no return. But somehow I managed to get through it, and with the help of Elvis, who was the leader of the expedition, and that was his real name, Elvis. It's always a good story name, that one. And yeah, so that was the Libyan desert, and that was the first time I'd done a desert. And we got out of there, it took us 7 days. We had to get back in past another big military base into this oasis for real. And I remember total exhaustion, total emotional, complete shutdown basically. The dehydration was just beyond ridiculous. And I had one lolly that I'd saved up, and I would put the lolly in my mouth as we're going past these guard towers coming into this oasis, and thinking I should be scared shitless now, and I'm not. And I don't know what's wrong. But we got in, and then I remember we found this little shack, because now we were on a place where there was a road, and there was a little shack with a Coca-Cola sign out the front. And I've been dreaming of Coca-Cola. I'm not promoting Coca-Cola now, but back then I can tell you it was a bloody nice sight. And I ended up having 7 bottles of Coca-Cola and some goat stew, and we got through. And so that was my first real desert experience, and the relationship went south. And it was another 3 years. I won't go into the details of that mess, but it was a turning point in my life where I said, and nobody will treat me like that again, and I'm going to work my way back up and to rebuild myself. So that was how I basically got into deserts, which became my thing.
Maybe in some ways the relationship needed to be there to drive, right? You're getting through the desert and then writing books and getting on the trajectory that you're clearly on.
Absolutely. Yeah, you when you go through shit like that, you have to find the upsides, because there's always a learning, and you can't see it when you're in the middle of it. But when you get through, you turn around and you look back and you think, yeah, thank goodness I went through that experience, because now my horizons are opened up to what I possibly can do. And it made me have a burning passion and fire to prove him wrong, for starters. And that's how I actually got into ultramarathon running. So the very first one I did was actually a couple of years later, because I had some pretty, badly damaged kidneys and things. And I did the Marathon des Sables in Morocco, which you're probably very familiar with. And this is back in the day, right? And I did that race, and I was just surrounded by all these amazing, incredible athletes all doing this thing. And yes, it was hard, but it was nothing compared to the the Libyan desert, and I was filled with positivity, like people around me, the comradeship, all of that sort of stuff was just like, oh my God, this is my people, right? And so then I became addicted and just did one after the other. Not probably quite as many as you back to back, but pretty full on for the next 20 odd years. So yeah, that was how it started.
That's awesome. And then I wasn't planning to interview you this way, but then tell me about the second book, because the first book was so good.
That was just one in the first book, but the second book was Running to Extremes. I did years and years of desert races, so a couple of thousand k's in the Sahara, the Moroccan, the Arabian, the Libyan desert, Niger, Jordan, Gobi Desert, Death Valley in the USA. You've done that. I've done that a couple of times. And then I started wanting to do something in the Himalayas. Now, I'm an asthmatic. I have a very small lung capacity. When it comes to talent for running, I don't have any. And one of the reasons I picked the desert was because it was hot and it was dry and my lungs were better in the deserts, and they're not generally so mountainous. And I did okay in that. But it got to a point where I was like, I know this shit now, this is sort of my jam. And I heard about a race in the Himalayas, and it was in the Indian Himalayas, and it was 222 Ks, which is about 137 miles or something. And it was over the two highest passes in the world, two highest motorable passes in the world. So on a road of sorts, like we're talking a metal road with big cliffs on the sides. And the first year that this was run and organised, there were only 3 runners that turned up. And 2 of them ended up in hospital with altitude sickness and other medical dramas, including some of the crews. It was just extreme. Like you're going from 3,600 meters to 5.7, which I think in feet is about 19,000 feet. Yeah, and then down again to 3.6 and then back up. So you had to do that twice within a non-stop period of time. And you know how these non-stops are. You're walking, crawling, whatever, but you've got 60 hours to get through. And when I was building up for this race, I was terrified about, I'm an asthmatic. I don't do well in the cold. I'm hopeless when it comes to the mountains. But I wanted to be in the Himalayas. And I rang Mark Cockbain, who had done, he's done Death Valley double and all this. And he was the guy that had done it the year before and succeeded. And I rang Mark and I said, what was it like? Should I do this race? And he said, well, I've still got health consequences a year later. It was pretty extreme and this and that and all these things. And then he said, but do you realise, Lise, no woman has done it yet? And I was like, right, that's it. I don't even heard anything else. All I heard was, no woman has done it yet. I'm in. Right, all I got to do is get my backside over there and get through it, and I'll be the first woman, surely. Okay, so I signed up. I started looking into altitude training, and I got a Hypoxico altitude training tent, got one sponsored, and I thought, great, now I'm going to be, in this tent. And I got in this tent, and I following the instructions, which was to go up very, very slowly and build up in the time. And I was running out of time by the time I got this tent, and the race was coming. And so I rang up my ex-husband, who's an Austrian ultramarathon runner, who I have a great rivalry with, and still good friends. And I rang him and I said, you've got one of these tents. Can I go faster? I need to get up to, really high, really fast. Or do I need to follow the instructions? And he said, that's just for wimps. Just turn it up to 6,500 meters every night and sleep in it. You'll be right. I've done it. And it's like, never ever trust your ex-husband. He may be trying to kill you, Because I did that. I slept in it every night at 6,500 meters. And after a couple of weeks, I was not well. And I thought, well, a certain amount of discomfort and all that sort of pretty normal, you just deal with it. But then I started having real big problems in my brain. Now, obviously, I've got a few mental issues anyway. But this was different, and I couldn't remember people from day to day. I didn't know what the hell was happening. I was missing bits of my memory. I had all these infections in the body because when you don't have enough oxygen, the bacteria just explodes. And so I went to my doctor, who knew what I was, all about. And I said, I'm having these symptoms. He said, what have you been doing? And I said, well, I've been sleeping in this tent. And, the ex-husband said that I could go up to this level, and maybe I pushed it a bit hard. And he said, well, what were your oxygen stats on it? And I said, around 70% at night time. And he's just like, oh my God, what the hell? You've been, knocking off your brain cells, and you really couldn't afford to do that. And you've now, sensitized your body. You've got a hypoxic brain concussion, so you've damaged your brain, literally. And you've got infections all over the place from a lack of oxygen. Get out of the tent, and I suggest you pull out of the race. And I was like, well, I'm not pulling out of the race. I'll get out of the tent. I put too much energy. I had a film crew. I had, the whole works coming. There's no way I could pull out. And so a few weeks later, I went over to Australia, and I'm sponsored by the North Face, and I was doing a 100K race over there in the Blue Mountains, and that went okay. I was sort of coming right. And the next day, I was doing a photo shoot, and when the North Face do a photo shoot, it's a bloody 15-hour odyssey in the mountains getting these shots. And I'd been running all day the day before, obviously. And at night time, I came down, and they did a flash photo, and it flashed my eyes, and I misstepped, and I ended up ripping the ligaments off my left ankle on both sides. And this was 10 weeks out from the race. So now I've got this brain concussion, all these infections. Now I've got the ripped ankle. Things aren't going too well. But I'm like, okay, I can't run for the next 6-7 weeks. I'll train any other which way I can. I'm still going to go. So terrible build up, right? I get to the actual race though. I go over 10 days earlier, and I'm like surrounded by these people. That it was 7 of us, and 6 of them were women. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. I thought I'd be the only woman here. And 5 of them were women and 2 guys. And I thought I'd be the only woman. I just had to finish, right? And 5 out of the 7 are women. I'm like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. And I've had this bad build-up. And then we had these doctors come over from America to study us, because humans haven't done this really at that type of speed, going up to that height that quickly and then down and then back up. So they wanted to do some tests on us and stuff. And they were giving us lectures on cerebral edema and pulmonary edema and how you can die this way and that way. And it got really scaremongering, like I got really scared and terrified. And I thought, shit, I've bitten off more than I can chew this time. And I'm no good in the mountains anyway. And things like my iron, I had really bad anemia, and I just wasn't carrying oxygen well anyhow. And I thought, well, shit, am I going to pull out or not? And so I rang up my dad, who's back in New Zealand, and my dad is a real hard ass. So he unfortunately passed away this year, but he was a really tough, hard man. And he would always be like, take a teaspoon of concrete and harden up type of attitude, right? I get on the phone to my dad this time, and he's just like, just come home, my little girl. I don't want you to do this one. And I'm like, ooh, really? It must be really bad if Dad's saying that. But I decided, hey, if I'm going to do this, I'm here, I've got my crew, I've got the film crew, I'm here, I'm going to do it. And if I'm going to do it, then I've got to protect my psyche. I've got to stop this fear-mongering, and I've got to just get on with the job. So I said to my crew, I want you to protect me from the other runners, from the doctors, from the Indian Army who were trying to stop the race because they thought it was dangerous. Just keep me away from them, and just fill me with positivity. Every time that I feel like I'm just panicking, I want you to talk me down. I want you to help me. And so that's what my amazing crew did. They just filled me with, we've got this sussed, and we strategized and we planned and we stayed in our little huddle. And 2 days later, we started the race. And you wake up on 4 a.m. in the morning, and you open your eyes and you go, oh, shit, it's that day, It's that day when you're about to go into battle.
We'll be right back to this interview, but first a message from today's sponsor, DUROLANE. You know that knee pain can really slow you down. Sometimes that knee pain is due to osteoarthritis, a disease that affects some 14 million Americans. Learn about osteoarthritis knee pain and how to alleviate it at oakneepainrelief.com. You'll find information there about non-surgical, non-opioid treatments for osteoarthritis knee pain that may help delay the need for knee surgery. One treatment you'll find there is DUROLANE, a single injection that may provide up to 6 months of relief from osteoarthritis knee pain. It's indicated for the treatment of mild to moderate osteoarthritis knee pain when conservative treatments have not worked. Risks can include general knee pain and pain at the injection site. Full prescribing information is at DUROLANE.com. Spartans say no to limits. You can learn more at oakneepainrelief.com. That's oakneepainrelief.com. All right, back to the interview.
You wake up on 4 a.m. in the morning, and you open your eyes and you go, oh shit, it's that day, you know. It's that day when you're about to go into battle. And I'm putting on my running gear, and as I put my running gear on, it's like a ritual for me. When I have my start number on, I'm freaking Wonder Woman, you know. I become something that I'm not. But in my head, I'm becoming this superhero, and I'm changing my psychology so that I release all that testosterone and start getting amped up for it. And it's a bit like, I don't know if you know our All Blacks. We have the All Blacks, who are our rugby players over here, famous rugby team. And they go into battle and they do a haka, which is like, I'm a Māori of Māori descent. And so this is like my haka for me. This is me preparing for war. And when I go into that war, I go into it like full bore. And we've got to pace ourselves and we've got our strategy, but I'm there with that fight mentality. This is not the normal Lisa that you see in everyday life. In my head, I'm changed. And we get going, we get underway. My team are just all on fire, and they've all got everything. We're going to go out real conservative because we know the first pass is nothing. It's all about the second. So I get up that first pass really slowly, have a vomiting situation halfway up, get to the top, all good. I start running down, and even running downhill is just really, really hard at that sort of a level. And the cold comes in the afternoon, and I can get an asthma attack. I get taken out by the medical. They give me some asthma medication, put me back on my feet. I'm allowed to carry on down into the valley, and now we're going through the next valley for the next 24 hours before we hit the next big pass. And so 24 hours later, we're in this massive slot canyon type thing where the heat is just coming in at 40 odd degrees. I don't know what's that, 110 or something. And I get heat stroke and pass out with heat stroke. So you've got these big swings in temperature from minus degrees up to real hot. My guys put me in the car because I've got a crew car following me, and they try to cool me down. They put me back out onto my feet, and I'm like now facing down the barrel of 35 kilometres up a hill, and I've been out there for 35, 40 hours at this time. I'm absolute toast. And it's no longer running. I'm walking at just slow walking. And I'm thinking in my head that battle is going on, that battle where you have the angel and the devil's saying, why don't you just sit down? Why don't you just give up? Nobody's going to care. It's, what's the point? All of this battle's going on in your head. And then you got the other side going, come on, you can do it. Keep going, keep fighting, all this, And as the time goes on, that battle and those swings of emotions start to get more and more, and you're heading up this pass, and as you're going higher and higher, it's getting colder and colder, and then hypothermia starts to set in. And then we had this massive snowstorm come into the mountain, and we're really battling. And then we would have, because we were on this really narrow roads with big cliffs, like world's most dangerous highways type of stuff, and you'd have convoys of army trucks come through because this was a military sort of area up on the top border of India to Pakistan and so on. And they'd come through at 40 odd trucks at a time. And they're spewing this unfiltered diesel into an atmosphere where there's about 30% of the oxygen anyway. And as these guys would come past, my crew would just have to literally slam me up against the cliff and just hold me there while the trucks went through, because you're not thinking very well at this point, right? And then get me back out. And one time I got a whole whiff of diesel, and that shut my lungs down again. I had another massive asthma attack, and my guys had to, get me back up on my feet again and then get me off again. And now I'm down to 3 kilometres an hour, 3 k's an hour, like just crawling 100 steppers at a time and having to sit down, and another 100. And my crew were just pulling out all the stops to keep me going. And then it got to the point where I'm like calculating the whole time, how far is it to the top? And I'm like, I'm sure it's only 2 kilometres. It must be 2 kilometres. And I talked to my guys, and they came back and they did some calculations, and they said, no, at least it's 6 kilometres to the top. And I'm like, that just broke me, because that was another 2 hours of this horrific asthma and problems and not breathing. And I've been out there for 48 hours or so. And I just broke. And I sat down in the snow and I bawled my eyes out. I do a lot of crying in the sport. and my crew came around me, and they were like patting me on the back and huddling around me and keeping me warm and telling me, it's okay, you've done the best you can, and we've seen what you've gone through, and you're just amazing. And they gave me permission to fail. And then one other guy in my crew came over by the name of Chris, and he was a journalist for the Geographic magazine, and he came over and he sat down in front of me and he grabbed me by the shoulders and he wasn't smiling. And he shook me, he literally shook me, and I could tell he wanted to slap me, but he didn't. He shook me and he said, "No effing way are you going to fail now. Get your ass up off the ground and take another step. And I'm going to stay out here with you every single way, but you are not failing. Not when I've been in that car for the last 48 hours with you and I've seen what you've been through and what I've been through. Get up now." And I was shocked because everyone else was like, "It's okay, you know." And I looked into the sky and I thought, well, okay, I'll get up and I'll take a step and I'll see. And one of the other guys, Joe, came out with me too, and he walked with me. And these guys both walked me up to the top of this Tanglang La Pass, step for step, talking me through it, got me through that over that hump. And I got to the top of this pass, and I knew that I was going to make it then. I had 33 kilometres to go, but it was downhill, and they'd gotten me over that point, and the snowstorm was still going, you know, but we knew that we'd get down. And I got through in 53 hours and 5 minutes. But I was the second woman home. I was beaten by a 55-year-old grandmother who also had asthma from the States, from the UK, sorry. And, you know, what this shows is that age is no barrier, your sex is no barrier, even your health situation's no barrier when you really, really, really are prepared to sacrifice everything to get to your goal.
I love it. I don't think anybody's ever gotten spoon-fed your books before. This is like...
Oh, it's just some of the good stories, but you know, there's so much learnings in this, you know, that I'm so passionate about sharing, because this, you know, when you're talking about running, you think, oh yeah, that's really cool, you must be an amazing athlete. I'm not. I'm very, very average. I'm not fast. I'm not great at all. I'm just very, very stubborn. But the things that I learnt doing this ultra marathoning and expeditions and the stuff that I've done was the mindset to get through really tough stuff and expand your horizons as to what you're capable of. And this really helped me in a situation, if I can tell you a story about my mum. Is that all right? Yep. It's good. So about 5 years ago, my mum, who's been the most amazing rock in my life and supported me through all these adventures and the ups and downs of life, and she had a massive aneurysm, which is a bleed in the brain, and she was rushed to hospital. We got that terrible phone call, "Mum's collapsed, she's been taken to hospital, get up here now." We get up there, and from the very get-go, we have this big medical misadventure where they thought she's having a migraine. The ambulance driver had said, "Oh, she's having a neurological event, a stroke or something," and he was ignored. And I didn't know anything about anything at that point. I was just, you know, stunned. And the doctors just said, she's got a migraine, we'll wait for the painkillers to set in. And they left her there. And for 6 hours, they left her there, and she had another massive attack. The pain when you have an aneurysm is apparently off the charts. Your brain is getting this blood poured into it, and your skull cavity only has a size, right? And it can't expand, and so the pressure is horrific. And after 6 hours, I ring up a friend who's a paramedic who's crewed for me in Death Valley and places, and I said, "You know these people up here, I'm not getting results, I need you up here. Something's major wrong, I don't know what to ask for." She comes up and she takes one look at Mum, and she says she's having an aneurysm or a stroke. She goes to this doctor and tells him in no uncertain terms to get her a CT scan right now. And so he finally relents, because she's a very strong lady. And so after 6 hours, we get the CT scan, and it comes back blood right throughout the brain, and then they start moving. And we live in a little regional town, so we had to get an air ambulance to our major hospital down in Wellington. And that took another 12 hours. So now we're 18 hours with this massive bleed in the brain, and she's dying, basically. And my dad comes up to me and he says, "You know, I better start preparing the funeral." And I did what my friend did in the Himalayas. I grabbed him by the shoulders and I shook him and I said, "Dad, she's alive, she's breathing, and we're going to fight with everything we have to get her back. Get your ass in the car, get down to Wellington, get my brothers, organise." So when people are in stress and, you know, chaos like that, you have to give them jobs to do, get their logical brain thinking, and get them underway. So they did that. They went down. I stayed with Mum, waited for the air ambulance. Eventually we got down to Wellington, into the operating theatre. They put a shunt into her head, which started to drain the blood. And then they said to us, look, she's not going to be out of the woods for the next few weeks. And we're going to have to do another operation, and you have to decide whether they cut straight into her brain or they go up for a femoral artery, and she's got a 50% chance of dying this way and a 20% chance of dying that way. So I said, well, we'll go to 20%. She was in and out of coma for 3 weeks, and in this time, because of that medical misadventure, I said, like, right, I am not leaving it up to everybody else. I'm going to start studying. I'm going to learn everything I possibly can. If I get a second chance with my mum, I'm going to bring her back. If it's anything, I don't want to miss anything ever again. So I started to study everything that I possibly could that's available on the internet. And I started to pick up things that the doctors weren't picking up. I picked up, for example, that she had sleep apnea, because I was seeing in her some of the stuff that I'd had when I was at altitude, like the infections in the mouth and all this sort of thing that was going on. And I had a battle after battle in the hospital to get her the resources, because once you're over 65, they're not so worried, there's a bit of ageism that goes on. The surgeons, though, were brilliant, and the people in the ICU in Wellington were awesome, but I was just hyper vigilant. So I had this first win after she came back to New Plymouth, and she'd stabilised. She'd come out of the coma, but she had basically no higher function left. And so she was like a baby, no speech, no memory, no ability to control any parts of her body, massive brain damage. I worked out the sleep apnea. They wouldn't let me do it. I brought in an outside consultant, and it came back with severe sleep apnea, and she was knocking off what little brain cells she had, and she wouldn't have lived very long at that rate. She was stopping hundreds of times a night, stopping breathing. So that was a small win. And when we got her on a CPAP machine, there were little bits of wins. And then I thought, what else can I do with oxygen? And so I came across something called hyperbaric oxygen therapy, which is what they use for dive accidents and the bends and things. And I was studying a Dr. Harch, actually, in America, who's done a lot with brain injuries and hyperbaric. And I thought, this is something, as soon as I can get my mum out of this hospital and stabilised, I'm going to get her into a hyperbaric chamber. Now, we don't have one in our town, or so I thought. There's no clinics. But I found a dive company, a commercial dive company that had one of these things. And I approached these guys and said, hey, this is my research. This is my situation. Would you let me use your chamber? And they said, amazing people said, yes. You get a legal waiver signed, you take legal responsibility. We'll let her do this when she gets out of the hospital. So then I had a massive battle to get her out of the hospital and to be able to take her home, because they said to us, look, she's 24/7, round-the-clock care. There is no way you and your family are going to cope with her. And I had argument after argument. All I wanted was a bit of support, caregivers in the morning and the evening to help us. And I said, we'll cope. And they said, you won't cope. And I came and I threw my 2 books at the social worker and said, that's who I am, and I'm not giving up. And I'm taking my mum home. And I could not get through to these people. And we had a real battle. And then I brought my brother in, who looks like The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. And he came with me to all meetings. And then we suddenly got what we needed. We just did whatever it took. I got mum home. We got the support. The first day I got her out of the hospital, and just as this, very, very sick, fragile woman who's hardly awake at all, I take her down to this factory. We stick her on a forklift in this big factory, and we stick her in this chamber, and everyone thinks I'm completely bonkers, right? But I've done my research. I know that this is the only thing going right now. And then I started to put her through treatments. And in this time, I'm studying everything to stay one step ahead of her in her recovery. So I studied functional neurology. I studied functional genomics. I studied epigenetics. I changed her diet to a keto diet. All of these aspects, and I just tried to stay one step ahead of her with her physio. We'd work her body for hours a day when she couldn't move, keeping the movement and the joints and the spasticity, and working every day. I had about an 8-hour program that I was putting her through, and after about a year, she started to come to as to what was happening to her, and she started to fight and wanted to come back. And it took me like 18 months just to teach her to roll over in bed. That's how slow and glacially slow the progress was. But eventually, after like 2.5 years, she was starting to walk, and she got out of the wheelchair and was walking. And then then I said to her, like, now we're going to get your driver's license back. And everyone, including my brothers and my dad, were like, are you nuts? She can't even drive her wheelchair, without crashing into the wall. There's no way she's going to drive a car. And I said, I'm going to teach you to drive a car. You watch. So me and Mum, we used to sneak down to this private car park at night time, and I'd take her around the outside of the car. She'd wobble her way around on this walker. I'd stick her in the other side, and I'd say to you, right, Mum, we're gonna drive. And the first time she's like, you've got to be kidding. I don't even go to the toilet by myself. And I'm like, I believe in you, and we're going to do this. And I just saw her face light up. She was excited that someone believed in her, that someone was going to help her get back. And I started the car and I put it into gear, and it was an automatic. And I said, all you got to do is, do this around this empty car park. And she did it the first time, and I had my heart in my mouth, but she did it. And then when she did that first round in that car park, she knew that she was going to come back, that she was going to get there. And I said, Mum, it's going to take us months. It's going to take us a lot of work. But we're going to get you there. Because when she was sitting, she had a lot less brain problems than when she was standing and walking. That took a lot more coordination. When she's sitting, she was actually a lot better. So night after night after night, we'd be doing this. And then we started to go out on the roads. And then when she got to a certain point, I said, right, now we're going back to the doctor, and we're going to get a medical done, and we're going to get this license. So we went back to the doctor. And this was her original GP, who hadn't seen her for a couple of years since the actual aneurysm. And he hadn't picked up what was happening to her. He'd always felt a bit bad about it, I think. And he came out to get her and said, oh, Isabel Tamati, and expected her to be in a wheelchair and, having to be wheeled in. My mum gets up, walks in, and he's just dancing around going, oh my God, it's a miracle, you're walking, I can't believe you're walking. And she said, yeah, and I'm here to get my license. So I need a medical done. And he's just like flabbergasted that she's talking and that she's walking and she wants her license. So we did the medical. She passed the medical. And he said, you're still going to have to go and sit the driving test again. So we go and do the driving test a couple of weeks later, and she fails the very first time. She did something wrong. And I'm like, oh my God, I've set her up for failure, and we've failed after all these months, and I was devastated. And my mum just turns to me and she says, no worries, darling, we'll just try again in a couple of weeks. Get me a teacher, a proper one, not you, and we'll do it again. And I was just like, wow, my mum's awesome. I got her a driving instructor who was better than me, and we trained for the next 2 months. Went back and we got the license. And ever since then, I've never been able to stop her. She's off, independent, living her life again. We train every single day. She goes to the gym 5 days a week. She trains 7 days a week. She's doing art classes. She's living her life again. And that's the story. And so that's my book that I've just written about that one. That one's called Relentless, How a Mother and Daughter Defied the Odds. And I wrote that because I wanted to empower people to never give up, no matter when someone tells you can't do something, that means they don't know how to get you to do something. But that does not mean that there is no way. And
there's always a way.
There's always a way.
The third door, and you gave me chills during 3 stories, and you and I are like brother and sister, I think, on the other side of the planet or something, because I'm as crazy as you are, and you just confirm that I'm actually normal.
Yep, you are normal. I've listened to so many of your podcasts, and I know like what you've done is just absolutely mind-blowing and incredible, but I totally get you, like the passion that you bring, that fire that you have, that mission that you have now to change millions of lives through what you do, that's what I'm about too now, in a slightly different area, but it's that fire that is rare. And I think when you find that fire in you, when you can wake that fire up in people, then they can achieve anything that they set their minds to, because they're willing to pay the price then, There is always a price to pay for everything you take, and you have to understand what that is, but you have to understand that out there is, in this big bubble, is your potential, and you're living in here. You're never going to get there, in that comfort space.
No, we're completely aligned. Is there a 4th book?
I do hope to. I'm still trying to get this one out into the world at the moment, because when I released it, we went into lockdown the week I released it, and it's been a bit of a slow start to the book. My dream is to get it published actually in America. I self-published it over here, and to get it out to the masses, because it isn't just a book about a mother and a daughter. It's a mindset book. It's an empowering book, and whether your story is different, the challenge that you're going through, the same principles apply. Whether you're an athlete or whether you're dealing with a health journey or you wanting to achieve some great thing, it's all the same principles of perseverance, of never quitting, of never backing down from a challenge, of not listening to the naysayers of the world, of finding mentors and people that will help you and take you to the next step and the next level. That's what this book is about, and that's what, I'm passionate about getting that out. And then I'm sure there will be a fourth book, but I need a bit of a breather after that one.
I'm glad we met. I now I feel like a failure after listening to your stories, going to Libyan desert, going up and over mountains and India.
You've got to be kidding me. I mean, the stuff that you've done, when you did that Death Valley and the Ironman and what was the other 100-miler, Vermont, I think it was, in the same week, I was just like, you've got to be kidding me. That is just insane, on the next level insane.
I was just chasing you. I was trying to get like a little bit better, but but you're awesome. How do people find out about you?
I through my website, basically, lisatamati.com. That's TAMATI. It sort of houses all my programs and my run programs and epigenetics and the books and all the good stuff is on there. And I'm on social, of course, on Facebook, on Instagram at Lisa Tamati. Keen for anyone to reach out if they've got any questions, they want to learn anything from me. I just really appreciate what you're doing. I think it's pretty epic. Joe, what's your take before we wrap up? I want to ask you a take. Like now, I think we're about the same age. I'm 52. What's your take? Has your mindset shifted in the last few years with the mind-body connection and not, because we're like hard-charging, type A, smash yourself to smithereens type people, do you see that there's also a point where you have to go, because I've been struggling with this one a little bit, longevity and health are very, very important, and going at the rate that I was going for a number of years was no longer serving the purpose that I have in the coming decades if I want to be around. What's your take on that now that you're older and wiser?
I mean, I think just naturally we slow down as human beings, right? In our late 20s, 30s, 40s, that's like the iron is really hot and we're going at it hard. And now I make sure I work out every day, like I'm sure you do. I probably drink more water now than I did before, thankfully. You didn't value those things. I sleep a little more than I did before because, right? And so I'm just valuing the things that our parents, your parents, my parents, said we should pay attention to, but we wouldn't listen. So I think we could have did all the things we did, but maybe did them a little smarter.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe you should have taken a little more water with you across the Libyan desert, right? Maybe slept a little more. I don't know, but you get it.
Yeah.
I still think life is really short, and I try to squeeze a lot in, and that's not going to change. But I think you're right. I think we're a little smarter about it now, and that's one of the things we do at Spartan is try to share that intelligence based on experience.
Yep.
Do as I say, not as I do. Not as I did.
Not as I did, yeah. I do find myself saying that too. Yeah, these are really cool stories, but guys, do it properly. Because you do damage. You can damage your body. And I've been dealing with a whole lot of health issues, in the aftermath of doing a lot of the crazy stuff. And so for me now, it's about longevity and health and vitality as I move hopefully into my hundreds. That's the goal. So the priorities have shifted a little bit to make it the optimal conditions for living a long, healthy life. I suppose it's logical once you start getting in your 50s and you start going, hang on a minute, things ain't working like it used to. But there's no, there isn't, age is no barrier to doing great stuff. You just have to do it differently and approach it slightly differently and honor and respect where your body's at, and use the latest technologies to help you get the best biohacking, the best, longevity stuff and all of that sort of stuff and the foundational health principles have become much more important. The sleep, the de-stressing, all of that sort of side of things as well, I think.
But never stop pushing.
But never stop pushing. Hell no.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Spartan Up Podcast. Spartan Up is your partner in resilience for mind, body, and spirit. We're here 3 days every week. Tuesdays, you can find Joe Sena, founder and CEO of Spartan, interviewing biohackers, business leaders, authors, and athletes. Thursdays and Saturdays, catch episodes from our DECA, Endurance, Trail, Combat, and La Ruta series. Do you know someone who needs a little nudge? Maybe they could use some motivation, tactics to be stronger, healthier, happier, more successful. Tell them about our show. And if you're watching on YouTube, leave us a comment. We want to know who's watching and who's listening. Thanks. See you next time. This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by DUROLANE, a single injection that may provide up to 6 months relief from osteoarthritis knee pain. Risks can include general knee pain and pain at the injection site. You can see full prescribing information at DUROLANE.com.